Hello and welcome to Console Cowboys. So let's talk today about what makes a good report. Now, first off, the thing you got to understand is this is likely the only thing the client is going to see from the penetration test that they purchased and had you perform for them. Also, you got to understand is this is where you can showcase all the awesome things that you did during testing. So you should really take advantage of this to show your methodologies and the cool things that you did, and you should be excited to do this. Now, let's first talk about some organizational issues related to the report, and then we'll get into some more specifics of the report. Organizational wise, you should be, as we noted in the last video, taking notes while you're testing and getting screenshots while you're testing. So this is for a few reasons. The first reason being that you want to remember what you did. You might not remember what you did when you get to the reporting of what you did day one of a month-long test. So you want to write some text and put the screenshot there so you can recall everything you did in detail. Now that aids your reporting, it makes it quicker, it makes it more efficient, and it makes the details, more precise. The other reason that you want to do it is once you get done testing, the client may very well revoke your access and you can't get in there to actually get those screenshots or get more data to do your reporting. So if you don't do it while you're actually testing, then you might run into issues. Now, it doesn't have to be this big long thing. It just has to be, a quick little couple sentences and then a screenshot. Then you have everything that you need to write your report. Another issue is the client very well might be patching issues. If you're doing daily updates or you're giving them a call in the middle of testing to tell them what's up, they might actually patch things or change code on you, and you might not be able to actually take those screenshots later. And then they're going to try to potentially tell you that it never existed and maybe it was an error on your part, right? And you're not here to prove anything to them. You're just here to show them what your results are. So you want to make sure you have those screenshots and you have the data to show them what the results were. Now, the last thing before we get into the reporting is when should you actually start reporting? And the answer to that is right away. You already have your notes, you already have your screenshots ready to go that you wrote down while you were testing. Get them in the document and start writing it immediately so all of those things that you did are fresh in your mind. Your report writing will be easier, and also you should have your report done early, not on time. So if you finish on a Friday, get your report in on Monday, even if it's due in a week from now, because there's other processes that have to happen with this report, and you do not want it to get to the client late. You're accountable for this report. You want to give the peer reviewers time to get their peer reviewing done, you time to do corrections, and the whole process to run very nicely. Once it leaves your hands, if somebody else screws something up, that's on them, but you're accountable for the things that you need to do, which is writing this report, getting it done early, and getting it done correct. Once we hop into the reporting, the next thing to understand is who are you speaking to? Because there's multiple audiences within this report. The audiences are relevant to the sections in the report. So the main sections of your report are going to be your executive summary, your story and methodology where you tell the things that you did and the processes, and then your findings that give some details specifically on those findings within your methodologies and your story. Within the executive summary, I should be able to hand this executive summary to somebody, anybody in the whole world, or anybody in the organization, and they should understand it precisely the state of that application, the state of that network. The reason being, you're not going to use technical jargon here. You're not going to use weird acronyms. You're just going to talk about, what did you do on this test? What were your observations? What was the picture that you got overall during testing? And, what were the findings at a very high level, and what impact did that provide to the company based on everything you were seeing, right? Whether it's mitigations or really bad findings, etc. But you don't want to get into the nitty-gritty details of these things. You just want anybody who picks up this report to understand, okay, yeah, I really, this was a really terrible network, or wow, we did a really good job protecting this thing. And that's what you want to do, and anybody should be able to read this. That's your audience there. It's everybody. Now, next up, you have, your methodologies and your stories. And you're going to talk about this within a storyboard type of section where you talk from beginning to end on a couple issues, like major issues, right? So you might show some scans, and then you might show some screenshots related to those scans, and highlight within the screenshots, what is relevant, and then go down through, and from that scan, then you were able to leverage the data from that to get to this next part. And then the data in that part showed there might be a vulnerability, so you validated that vulnerability here. Then you leverage that vulnerability and exploited it, and here's what the results were. And you're going to walk through that as if it's a story. But within that, you have your text that needs to be clear and concise. Anybody should be able to read this and really just get a high-level understanding of what you did and what the results were. And when they look at the screenshots, again, you're not trying to prove that a vulnerability exists. You're showing you the results of your testing. You're showing the screenshot dialed in. It's not going to be your whole screen. You're going to dial that into what's relevant. So maybe you scanned something and you found a page and it had an error message that you leveraged in an attack. You're going to dial that into the section of the page. You're going to highlight or put a red box around or some arrows, whatever makes sense for that screenshot. So when they look at the screenshot, they go, oh, that's a web page. Oh, that's a box around that. Oh, that's the error message he's talking about directly above. So you want to be very clear and concise from the screenshots to the text, and everybody should be able to understand what's going on. But you can get into more technical details because you're showing ports, you're showing services, you're showing output, and you're going through a methodology of your testing process. But it's not just for the really bad things you found. Sometimes you don't find anything bad, but you did a lot of cool stuff, and you really want to highlight that in the report to show, hey, they had a lot of good mitigating factors that really kicked your butt. So let's do an example of both. Let's say that you had a file upload, and you exploited this and you got a shell. So you're going to show, hey, here's a file upload, picture, some arrows, etc., and talk about it. And then talk about, oh, I uploaded a malicious file. Here's a screenshot. And I was able to use this in a social engineering attack to exploit somebody's machine. Or if that was not in scope, just talk about what it could be used for. Then, from there, I tried to upload a malicious file, but it blocked based on extension because I got this error. So then I fuzzed some stuff and show the fuzzing output and highlight some relevant things. And this allowed me to then find an extension that worked. And then I used this extension, I uploaded it. Here is the page where I was able to access my uploaded shell. And then I got access to the machine. Here's, my output of like a uname or whatever it is. And then here's where I escalated privileges, etc., etc. And you're going to go through that methodology of what you did, showing the mitigating factors, if they blocked something or if they didn't. And here's the ultimate result. And what is the impact of that whole thing? I was able to get access to this machine over the internet, which has a huge impact because now I'm able to access your internal network or your AWS cloud or wherever it is. Talk about that so they understand what you did and what the impact is. Now, let's say you didn't get anywhere with this. Let's say you tried to upload malicious files. AV caught it. Show that. You then try to change the file type by changing data within the file that's being uploaded and change it to a data that they accept. It still got caught. Then you tried to change the extensions. That got caught. You tried to do bypasses like a present 00 and still have the extension there. That got caught. And go through the methodology of what you did and show all the mitigating factors and how they did things correctly. And it really thwarted you, but it gives them the value of seeing your methodology and how you would test these things and why all these mitigating controls that they put in there are valuable. And within that, it might give them more value because maybe it's giving you error message that keys you in exactly what the problem is. And these are error messages they can make more generic, so you can't even go through that process and discern what may be a good bypass. And that'll add value to them simply by showing them what they did good, but what they can improve upon. Now this, again, You want anybody to read through this and kind of understand what you did, but you're going to show technical detail throughout and screenshots and really good stuff. But the thing you want to keep out of these sections are irrelevant things. So you don't want to ramble on within your storyboard or your executive summary about things that don't matter. You don't want to have screenshots in there that confuse things. Dial your screenshots into only relevant data. And within your executive summary and things between your storyboard and your executive summary, don't add in charts and graphs that are not relevant. I see a lot of good reports. I see a lot of bad reports. And a lot of the bad reports, they put a lot of charts and graphs that look pretty, and they say, oh, executive summaries or executives really love these charts and graphs. But the reality is, does the executive actually understand the data that you're depicting in this chart? And do they actually even care? Likely they don't. So unless it's depicting something that is completely irrelevant, it makes sense to have it in there, remove it from your report. Overall, your report should be clear and concise from the bottom to the top. And anybody should be able to read through this thing and not be, led off path to irrelevant things and be like, why is this here? What is this in the context of my report? So with that out of the way, let's talk about the findings. So the findings should be kind of like little mini stories, and you should be able to rip this part of the report off and hand it to a developer or hand it to a network architect or anybody who's in charge of fixing things, and they should be able to read the finding, understand what you did, what the results were, where that actually happened, and then at a high level, how they should go about mitigating this. That way, if they pick up this report, they can read through each finding and be like, okay, yep, I get it. I have to go to this part of the code and fix this, or I have to change this configuration on this machine, or et cetera, et cetera. And the best ways to fix it, they should be able to either at a high level understand that and use, industry standard stuff, or be able to do a little bit of Googling and get there. But also when you get to the readout call, you might have to add a little more context. And this is where having your report be clear and concise is important. If your report is not clear and concise, they're going to have 100 questions. They're going to argue with you. They're going to contest your findings. But everything's clear and concise and they understand. Instead, they're just going to ask you, hey, can you give me a little more information on the impact of this or better ways to fix it? Because we have these issues over here where if we change this, it's going to break things. But, can we do this instead? And maybe you can help them out there, without going into doing things and nitty gritty detail of the fix, but really just help them understand the impact and the context of things a little better versus them arguing with you over findings, because everything should be clear and concise. Now, if you do this right, you should get to your, readout call and everything should be awesome and everybody should be happy. And we'll talk about all the issues you're going to run into on those readout calls in the next video. In this one, we're just kind of talking about the reporting end, which is kind of your little box, right? You don't have other people in there messing with your report other than the peer reviewers. So this is where you get to show the way that you shined within the testing, but there shouldn't be any client issues here. It should just be more of you in a clear, concise manner showing all the awesome things that you did so everybody can understand the value that was given from this penetration testing report. Hopefully all of this was really good information for you to help you out, and the things that you should avoid, the things that you should be doing before and after, and the way you should think about who you're talking with. In the next video, we'll get into that readout call and all the client issues that can go with that, and that will relate back to the report, obviously, and the ways to thwart that. So hopefully you learned something today, and I'll catch you in the next one.